All right, good afternoon. We are your regional perspective panel, and I will ask a few questions, and then I'll open it up for you all to ask questions. A few things about the rules of this session. I will be scoring your answers. Extra points for any Star Trek metaphor worked in, because I'm just going to go with the theme. And I reserve the right to take away points.
Okay, before you jump, can I just throw something out? I know earlier today when the conference started, Rick Bishop was talking about renaming your vehicle to a bus, so everybody was coerced into calling their vehicle a bus, and then everybody could say they came via bus. I didn't come via bus, but I do have a green car.
Oh, -10. And actually, but thank you for reminding me that Rick should get a -5 for misrepresenting a bus. So on with that, I'm going to, I think what I would just do is to let each of you kind of describe what your regional entity is doing in terms of a major sustainability initiative. Rick, you've already touched on it, but maybe you could talk about where you're going from there with your climate action plan. I'll start with you.
Well, as I mentioned before, the Climate Action Plan is just one piece of a sustainability effort, and I was really pleased to hear Rob earlier talk about sustainability being part of economic development, and that's really where I think we're trying to go as a sub-region, is to get everybody together, cities, the county, special districts in western Riverside County, understanding that this really is the way that we need to be thinking about our future. You know, in other words, the bottom line is, you know, we're probably making a mistake if we're planning for housing and employing the next 1 million people that are going to be living in western Riverside County. The collective mindset of the region is changing, which is really exciting as we talk about and we think about how we're going to house and employ 1 million more people that are going to be coming to western Riverside County. And so I think the point, and I'm hoping the point of this panel is that we need to think differently about how to plan for the next million compared to how we housed and employed the previous million people. Things are very much different. Resources are different, demographics are different, desires are different, and the way cities and counties need to think about that needs to change as well.
I'm going to give you +11 for that, for
Solid.
Providing some focus and an extra point for incorporating the thoughts of another speaker. Ray, I'm going to jump to you because you have your county vision plan, so that might be a place to talk about what you're doing on a county-wide basis.
So in San Bernardino County back in 2011, we authored a countywide vision, which really tried to focus in on what we wanted the county to look like for future generations. And from that point, there were 9 elements that were in the countywide vision. And I'll just run through those real quick. It was jobs and economy, that's an obvious one. Education, another obvious one. The environment, yet another obvious one. Wellness, housing, infrastructure, public safety, quality of life, and image. Okay? And so as we're all working towards creating a new reality in our communities, image is obviously part of that equation. San Bernardino Associated Governments, the entity that I represent, is also the Council of Governments for San Bernardino County. It kind of sounds like I'm coming and going a little bit, but as one of our many hats. And so, what's that?
Keep going.
And Mayor is a good friend of mine, so she feels that she can disrupt me at any point. But as the Council of Governments, you know, we play a key role in implementing the countywide vision. So working collaboratively with the county and the 24 cities across the county, we have focused in on 2 major elements of the countywide vision, recognizing one, that if you distribute your resources too extensively, you're probably not going to accomplish anything. And secondly, the 2 most important elements of the countywide vision today are education and the environment. And so education, when we look at our workforce and the type of what we want our county to look like in the future, education attainment is absolutely critical to the diversity that's going to be necessary to be successful in the future. Unfortunately, today in San Bernardino County, education attainment is woefully low. And so it's something that we really need to focus in on. We've been working with the county, we've been working with the school districts, and been working with key sectors of the business community to plan and implement this element of the vision. So there's a lot of activity in this arena, and the end goal there certainly is to have much higher educational attainment and make sure that the workforce of the future is trained to meet the needs of the county and the business sectors that will exist in the county in the future. Environment is the other key thing, and environment translates directly to quality of life, and that's something that we're all very interested in here, something certainly that's sort of an underlying tone of this conference here today. And so, one of the issues that we're struggling with in our county right now, and Riverside County as well, is we're all emerging from the Great Recession. And that means that our electeds are trying to find a way to help us not only recover to where we were in 2006, 2007, but to advance to a new level. And how do we do that? We've got to focus on the economy, but at the same time, we have to pay attention to the environment. In reality, the environment and the economy are intrinsically intertwined. Long term, if you don't pay attention to the environmental issues that we're talking about, your economy will suffer, right? Short term, if you don't have economic success from which you can draw resources to invest in the environmental issues that are so important, you're not going to really get anywhere. So these two elements are, again, intrinsically intertwined. I like to think of it as sort of a string that's tied, both ends are tied together, and so we're constantly trying to find that balancing point. But that's the key that we're focused on right now. We've got a vision plan, and we're trying to implement that plan right now, Bill.
And I'll come to you in just a second, but I might ask Ann, because...
Before you ask Ann, how many points did I get?
Well, you've got 9, but then I added 3 for the use of technology, so 12. So you mentioned that you're both the COG and the Regional Transportation Planning Agency in Western Riverside County. That's split between your duty and Rick. So I might ask you what you're doing. I think you have the integrated project that you're working on as one measure of sustainability, but you can also just take that where you want.
Sure, and this is really a dangerous game right now, because if he's giving us points, plus and minus, and so by the end of this is going to be really interesting, and I know I interrupted Ray, so I'm likely to have payback, so I apologize in advance for what's going to happen.
I did forget that you also got -2 interruption points.
I know. So I'm starting out at a deficit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm really happy to be here today, and Riverside County Transportation Commission is the county's transportation planning agency, so we're responsible for making funding decisions related to all aspects of transportation. I think one of our primary responsibilities is the administration of Measure A, which is our half-cent sales tax that the voters have twice approved to focus investments on transportation projects and programs. Although our focus is primarily on transportation, and unlike the responsibilities that Sandbag has, which also focuses on Council of Government issues, we've always looked at transportation in the context of the bigger picture of the quality of life within Riverside County, and I'll talk a little bit about Riverside County Integrated Project. But we really tried to look at it from the aspect of how does an efficient transportation system benefit the entirety of the county, and we've really been honing in on some guiding principles over the past couple of years as the stakes have gotten a lot higher. Transportation funding has been decreasing. There are new programs, cap and trade, implementation of SB 375. The stakes are a lot higher, and we need to be even smarter with our investment decisions. So we've been focused on some guiding principles, and I'll just highlight a couple of them. But it's the concept that an efficient, productive transportation system is key for our economic prosperity, for our quality of life, that we need to focus our investments on projects that will achieve those goals. We need to be collaborating with partners to get it done. We need to attract and retain jobs in our region. We need to be dedicated to environmental stewardship. And the Riverside County Integrated Project, which actually is well over 15 years old right now, is an effort led by the county supervisors in Riverside to balance general plan land use decisions with a transportation network and habitat preservation. That there is a key linkage between those three components, and if one of those components is not successful, then we'll all fail. And that integrated project has really been the foundation for decisions that have been made for well over a decade here in Riverside County, and we've seen some real success there. So I think that's a great example of how integrated planning can be done and how you draw the connections between all of the different components. And we have invested about $150 million in the acquisition of land in western Riverside County. We have not only helped create better quality habitat preservation, but we've also made sure that we've been able to streamline transportation projects along the way. So the integrated project is really a good example of that. But I can see in the coming years that the decisions we make about transportation investment are always going to be geared towards those bigger picture issues of what does this do for our prosperity, for our economy, and how does it help us live long and prosper?
Oh, extra. Nice. Nice. Okay, that's 30 points.
Yes.
All right. I was waiting for that. Susan, in some ways you're a little bit different because you're not from a multi-county entity like the rest, although I understand that there are a few cities in Riverside County. Joke. But I thought that you could -3 for bad joke for moderator. I thought you could describe how you're working sustainability issues into your work as a public health officer.
County health departments, either San Bernardino County or Riverside County, are really responsible for the whole population. In Riverside, it's 2.2 million residents. And there are a lot of people that are trying to measure how healthy are we. And one of those groups is Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the University of Wisconsin, and they've come out with county health rankings. So they're ranking counties against counties and counties within states. So how is Riverside County doing? Well, we rank 26th out of 57 counties that were surveyed for overall health outcomes. That includes how long we live, or our mortality, and we're at 25th%, or how healthy we feel while we're alive, our morbidity, and we rank 38th. So we're below the median on that one. We also are ranked for health factors. We are 38 out of 57 counties overall for health factors. And that includes social and economic factors. We rank 31st. For health behaviors, our access, our eating healthy, getting physically active, smoking or not, we're ranked 34th. For clinical care and access to primary care physicians, we're ranked 48 out of 57 counties. And finally, in our physical or built environment, we're ranked 48th out of 57. And that really gets to our conversation today about sustainability and how can we work in partnership to create our environments, whether it be where we work, live, play, worship, how can they be more healthy? We're also looking at so many things. How do you jump in? I might go home and just get under a blanket, because how do you approach this? How do you change these rankings and move the needle over time? And it's hard to do that. But in Riverside County, we're focusing on 4 priorities through our Healthy Riverside County initiative. The first priority has to do with increasing access to and consumption of healthy foods and beverages so that we can maintain a healthy weight. We're also looking at increasing daily physical activity at work, home, school. We're also continuing to look at reducing tobacco use and tobacco exposure. Even though more people or fewer people are smoking, we have increased rates of tobacco use among our youth and our young adults. And now with e-cigarettes and vaping, it's another way for people to get nicotine that can cause addiction. And finally, our fourth priority has to do with building safe and healthy built environments that have healthy housing, who you're able to have your children walk safely or bike safely to school, that there are options for healthy transportation. So our Healthy Riverside County Initiative plan, we're hoping we're going to turn that tide of chronic disease that's growing, but also improve our health rankings over time through working in partnership with all of you, our cities, our transportation agencies, our churches, our community members, to improve health and promote livable communities through partnerships, through developing specific policies to improve health, looking at systems and how we deliver care, and finally through having our safe and healthy built environments.
I thought that maybe what we could do now is kind of focus it on in some ways that were the statewide conversation as, and maybe the two of you are the right person to ask this question to in terms of cap and trade is a new program. We just had a first round of applications that went in, and I know that there were some conversations that went on. What was your assessment? What does this region need to do to be competitive for that kind of funding? And then I'll follow up, is that the right kind of model to be using in your opinion, or is there some other thing that would capture the needs of the region better? Ann.
Okay, great, thank you. You know, I think the cap and trade opportunities could be really beneficial in Riverside County, and Rob's smiling. Cap and trade is new. There's not a big understanding of how much money this will mean. It's not been tested yet to see if the guidelines that have been set up and the programs that have been set up are the right ones, or are they being implemented correctly, but we've got our first shot here. So as soon as the guidelines were established, we pulled together a lot of the people in this room, Rick, Susan and her folks, Rob, EDA, housing, county parks, transportation, land management, RTA. We all got in a room and talked about how can we be as competitive as possible in these cap and trade programs, acknowledging that we had very, very short time frames and that we didn't have ideal projects right now. So I think we're starting out a little bit slow, but I think everyone around the state is starting out slow. The timelines are so condensed that people had to have a project ready to go, ready to fly off the shelf to be submitted in this first cycle. So we did submit a couple of projects, and when I say we, I don't mean RCTC. I'm talking about the big we. We put in a couple of projects that are really simple. And while they might not be the kind of flagship project that the Strategic Growth Council would want to say, you know, this is an ideal project, we do think they're important. We've submitted projects that are really simple, basic, like sidewalks in disadvantaged communities that help connect the houses with the community center, with the grocery store, with the bus stop, with the school. These are really basic improvements, and we've got a lot of communities throughout Riverside County that fall in the disadvantaged community categories. So there's an example right there of projects that may not be the flashiest, but and I would argue maybe they might be the most important. If we have people who can't even safely walk to school or walk to the store or walk to the bus stop, we have a responsibility to make sure that they can get there. So I think cap and trade gives us the opportunity to start making those improvements, to start getting some investments underway. I think it also gives us the ability to start gearing up for big projects. But I think long term, what it's going to do, money is always a great incentive. So what the cap and trade program is going to do, it's going to start driving behavior more than any other policy could. There's money attached, which means people will start focusing on the kinds of projects that will bring the most money back into the county. So I think there's a lot of potential here. I hope that the programs are successful, but there is no doubt that Riverside County is going to be strategizing on how we can bring as much cap and trade dollars here to the county as we possibly can.
And it's this moderator's observation that the data I just heard you share in terms of where Riverside County ranks means that improvements are probably likely to score really well because you have your projects are likely to have greater impact.
I do think so. Now, this is an interesting thing, and we'll have to see how this plays out. In this program, they have identified through the EnviroScreen the disadvantaged communities throughout the state and their scores and ranking based on a variety of different criteria. Riverside County has many, many areas that ranked as seriously disadvantaged and scored very high. Now, this is not the list you want to be at the top of.
No.
It really isn't. But on the other hand, it means we have a great opportunity here to turn those disadvantaged communities into advantaged communities and get them off that list. So that's another reason why we need to be very aggressive. What's been happening at a statewide level, there are a lot of areas in the state where I would say sustainability type projects, housing projects, transit-oriented development type projects have been a focus for a while. So the Bay Area and San Diego have long done a lot of these innovative things. They don't have many disadvantaged communities within their counties. There may be a push from some very powerful areas in the state to remove disadvantaged communities from the criteria or to minimize the disadvantaged community criteria scoring. And I think that's another area where we need to really pay attention, is that because of our standing on that list, we may have a lot of potential for cap and trade. So from a political and legislative standpoint, we're going to be watching that very carefully. We need to make sure that the criteria isn't changed.
Okay.
So, Ann, I'll share that we are very close with you on that list, unfortunately, but we share the same concerns, and we'll be working very closely together to make sure that we aren't undervalued in this. I think the only thing I'll say, in addition to what Ann said, because she spoke to a lot of things that are common between our two counties as we're moving forward and looking at cap and trade opportunities. Cap and trade really, I think, is a good thing in the context that the state of California, when they passed AB 32 and SB 375, really brought forward unfunded mandates. I'm not saying they're bad, but the state was really challenging local communities to do things differently, to think out of the box and do things differently, to become more sustainable. But there was nothing attached from the state to help in accomplishing that. And where cap and trade, which, by the way, is spoken for in every opportunity in California that requires funding. So cap and trade is very much watered down from that perspective, because it's the only thing that the state has come up with, the only new idea in a funding realm for a couple decades probably. And so, but the reality is the state now is investing in providing opportunities for us and for local communities to compete for some funds to help us advance in these arenas. And so I think that's great for a change. We're seeing the state recognize that in addition to laying the framework and challenging us through these mandates, that they also need to put some money on the table to help incentivize us moving in that direction.
Susan, I may ask you a slightly different question. How are you, I mean, you identified 4 specific areas. How are you working with your other fellow agencies, reaching out to kind of get them to work with you on these issues? In the state, they have a group called the Health and All Policies Task Force, which is basically the Department of Health putting health policies in everybody else's table. I wonder if you have a similar strategy, or how are you working with the folks around here?
We're working in a number of ways. We're working at the state level to implement health and all policies across different state departments and areas of work. Locally, though, we are definitely working with our Planning and Transportation Agency. We were a key partner in the Healthy Communities Element, which is the first county land use healthy communities element in the state of California, and we're reaching now to assist cities like the city of Coachella and others to build a healthy communities element into their plan. We're also working with, you mentioned cap and trade. Again, public health may seem like an unlikely partner, but when you build those sidewalks and those connections to transit and community centers and schools, we can help encourage and educate the population to do that for a healthy lifestyle, as well as help with evaluation. We have evaluators who can help look at how many folks are using the trail or the sidewalk, how are we improving the health, reducing the number of crashes between pedestrians and cars and things like that. So I would think those are different areas. And then related to the Healthy Riverside County Initiative, we're looking both internally with our county partners and departments, but also with our community. So we are meeting with numerous departments in the county, looking at ways to approach our systems to include health in all policies, looking at our workforce and creating a culture of health.
Okay. And Rick, what is the word? I'm struck because through your climate action plan, you've done a lot of grassroots outreach. You've talked to the city council members. I'm wondering how sometimes the word sustainability gets overused or nobody knows what it means. How are you working to implement, to get people focused on some of the issues that might really be changed? Are they responding to that word, or are you finding different language? I think how you speak about this problem it affects how people respond.
Yeah, it's a good question, and quite frankly, the reactions to the use of the term sustainability are mixed. I kind of think the term sustainability is last decade's smart growth. We used to talk about smart growth 10, 15 years ago, and that was kind of a buzzword for people. Some liked it, some hated it, and sustainability still is kind of in that same kind of box. What we did, which was kind of an evolutional process that started about 4 years ago, is we had a visioning session with our executive committee, our elected officials, our city managers, and it was one of these day-long sessions, and at the end of the day, we asked our executive committee and the participants to name what they thought the most important issues were for potential sub-regional involvement through WRCOG. And as you can expect, the terms and the issues were familiar ones for the most part. Economy was on the list, education was on the list, environment was on the list, energy was on the list. A little bit surprising, healthy communities was on the list, housing and transportation. And when we started to take a look at that listing, it was sort of a group epiphany that occurred, and we said, you know what, if you really want to improve the economy in Western Riverside County, you have to improve each one of these other components that were listed with that. You need to improve the environment, you need to improve the level of education, and you need to improve and make sure that you have certainty in energy and water supply. So each of these things became, which are oftentimes associated with sustainability, we were able to transition them and now start to associate them with a strong economy. And so what we've been working on is to kind of create that message and mold the message so that people understand that when we're talking about sustainability, what we're really talking about is economic development in Western Riverside County. And I think for too long, we've sort of had a collective mindset that economic development is achieved through reducing fees or expediting permits, and that's important. But the more important thing when you talk about a quality of life, what's going to make people want to live here? What's going to make people want to put their businesses here? It's not necessarily related to that. It's related to improved education and better air quality, more environmental amenities, more diversity in the housing stock. And so we've been able to kind of intertwine all those issues that our executive committee has said are important with the concept of economic development.
That was actually, and you keep mentioning quality of life, and I kind of give you a point every time you do that. So that's just
Did I
general.
get points for my quality of life?
Oh, yeah, you did. In fact, you're kind of winning right now, I think. Okay. So, although I haven't quite scored the good socks yet, so that's a wild card out there. I don't know. A general question I have before I open it up to the audience for some questions is, and this was another factor we discussed this morning, but the world seems to be changing a lot when it comes to data and mapping and modeling and the information we have to make a decision. And I'm wondering how you see that affecting your ability to make good decisions on sustainability issues or on these economic development issues, as Rick says. And I'll start with Susan this time.
Well, we've got a lot of data to map, and it might be very interesting to overlay some information on chronic illness in a particular disadvantaged community. As I mentioned, looking at collision data to help select which school district or school you want to work with to improve access for walkability and safe routes to school. We use it a lot, and the geographic mapping has really been able to put it in a picture rather than just data tables. And I think it's a great way to educate our public too. You can put it in a picture, you can help it be a component to telling the stories that we've been talking about.
As a scientist by training,
Yeah.
data is absolutely important, but you can get lost in data very quickly. And so if you don't know what it is that you're searching for, you don't want to be awash in data. We've heard the phrase big data, right? And that's a huge challenge for people to understand how to massage and distill information that's available out there and the ever-growing amounts of information into meaningful information that we can bring to our policy boards and affect change. And so it's really important not to just latch on to the fact that data might exist out there, because that data may be meaningless to solving your problem, but at the same time, you have to take advantage of the opportunity that data affords. There should be some points in that.
Yeah, there's,
that
and actually
dethrones the
the
queen.
scientist was a nice thing in big data, all very nice. Do you have anything to add on that?
I do.
Okay.
I do. We can't be overly dependent on data, but I think it's going to become increasingly important. The right kind of data is going to be increasingly important because we don't have enough money to invest in all of the needs. So we're going to have to be very strategic and very focused about our investment so that we try to hit the biggest problems right off the bat. And so I think that's where data can become really important, and whether it's health statistic data, whether it's the disadvantaged community data, whether it's the data that we traditionally use in transportation, which is as simple as how congested is it, or how many people are using it, or how many bikes might be, how many bikes and runners might be around the Santa Ana River Trail. There is data out there that we're going to need because we have to be able to demonstrate, not just demonstrate that we're spending our money wisely, but we need to be making sure that we're getting the biggest bang for the buck. And it's just the needs are so great, we've got to make sure we spend our money wisely.
And now you got a delay penalty, but now you get.
Well, I'm going to rally right now.
Okay.
I wanted to hear the others. Data is really important, but I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said public opinion is everything. And so I think our job collectively is, in our positions and with all the policymakers in the audience, is to be able to think about what public opinion is and then take the data that we have that they might not necessarily have and help to craft a message that might help change public opinion that makes it easier to turn public policy around. So I think there's a real valuable tool, not just in the data, because we tend to be data wonks and just use that, but we have to be sensitive to where people are on a particular issue or issues, and then use the data to help move that needle.
Nice rally. This gave you some points. You all got -3 for missing the obvious data Star Trek analogy. That was a character.
Oh, man.
I mean, I couldn't serve that up to you any better. Anyway, so lightning round. Before I go out, lightning round. one thing on the issues we've talked today, one thing that we can be doing better, simply.
Kind of simple. Sorry, I failed. I think what we need to do better is make sure that we do not pit all the different interests against each other. We shouldn't be making value judgments about which mode is better. Roads for all, hashtag roads for all modes.
You got extra points for that.
We can't make those value judgments about which mode is better or which aspect of quality of life is more important. We need to find a way to integrate the needs and make sure that we do our best for the overall quality of life for folks. Because I think if we start getting so competitive and we start going back into silos of Susan's worried only about public health, I'm only worried about transportation, Rob's only worried about economic development, I think that signals a future that's not particularly bright. So I think we have to stick together.
Stick together. One thing we'd do better.
I think the first thing we need to do is realize that there are a multitude of things that we need to be working on, but we can't accomplish success in every single realm if we tackle everything at the same time. And so we really need to hone in on what are the few really important things and find successes out of that we can leverage not only more resources, but also public opinion and public support.
Look for existing models. We have great ones in our county. City of Riverside, exceptional model in many of these areas. Healthy Harupa Valley with the City of Harupa Valley is a great project, as well as Live Well Paris. So partnering together, looking for models to then move forward.
Well, and I think Julia mentioned earlier in her presentation, finding easy, small things that create success. And when you can do that, you create momentum. So I think that's important, such as the tree planting movement that Mayor Bailey had talked about. But I think it's important, Bill, for us to collectively be laser focused, Bill. Thank you. On maintaining our attention to this sustainability plan. This is a really important issue for Western Riverside County, for San Bernardino County, to have a real assertive, objective plan that all of the participants are collaborating in and developing, and then working very hard to implement that. That's one of the most important things we can do as planners and transportation officials.
Just to try to get an extra point, can I say phaser focused as opposed to laser focused? Thank you.
And my son had a model USS Enterprise.
Oh, no. Okay, we're losing a little focus. Let me. Shouldn't have done that. Going back, one thing your agency is doing right, starting with Rick.
I think we're doing a pretty good job of trying to be very flexible in how we do things and making sure that we're staying open to hear positions that not only are in sync with where we think we're going, but also in opposition too. And I think it's important to understand that there's still a lot of folks that maybe don't like some of the initiatives that we're undertaking, and we need to be objective in listening to that and making sure that we're astute to the concerns that they have so we can better address them.
For the first time in my 28 years with the County of Riverside, the health department is going to the community to ask, what are our health priorities? And there's a survey on the back table for the first time to get the public opinion, to help us plan, to focus, and improve the health.
I'm going to go back to the countywide vision in San Bernardino County. Again, in 2011, several years ago, we laid a framework for success in our county. And we have been very focused on moving the needle within that framework. And as I mentioned, the two elements, again, trying not to dilute the effort. But I think we're seeing successes now in the education realm, and we're starting to see some successes in the environmental realm. And we're continuing in that effort.
We're committed to our principles. We're focused on achieving our objectives. And we're going to be persistent and dedicated to make sure that we get there.
With that, I appreciate those answers, and I've allowed some time for some audience questions. This, of course, is where we appear at the audience and somebody says, am I the first one? Am I the first one? Yes, you. I might ask a speaker, but I'll take the first hand up. Right Yes, yeah, we'll go with you first and then the woman right next to you. And a microphone is coming to you, so, and the two questions are right there in the middle of the back, so.
Thank you. Shirley Medina with the Riverside County Transportation Commission. I work for
I
Ann.
didn't pay her.
No, actually, I haven't seen her
You will
for a
get
couple
extra
days.
points if you ask her a hard question.
No, I won't do that. I was at the Active Transportation Workshop, Cycle 2 round in Sacramento yesterday. The California Transportation Commission administers this new fund program. And public health is something that's been integrated into the criteria. It's kind of the first time for transportation projects to get scored based on the improvement to public health. So, Susan, you're going to get a lot of phone calls, and I guess I would like to know what type of information is readily available, because I think with the success that Riverside County had in round one, you will be getting called, because this is an area that was specifically stressed yesterday that applicants need to beef up. So, Susan, this is addressed to you. How can you help us get more points in that category?
Should have had you have Michael answer it.
Yeah.
Of course, she had to ask you the question.
Yeah. And while we're waiting, I'll just say that Ann is getting some extra points because her staff asked a really good question.
So Michael Ozier is Deputy Director in Public Health. He's here with Salome Waga, an epidemiologist, and we are looking at that criteria, and we will identify what data we may have access to help you with that, so please call us. Please call us. We'll do what we can.
Next question, right.
Good afternoon. Juanita Cruz, made to order for you, a sustainability company. What we're doing basically is we're doing commercial buildings and home health care A to Z, as long as it's legal and moral. You order us. What we're doing is we're totally revamping having our smart cars, get it going with the sustainability, thinking green, and also with, doing nanny care, whatever you order, event planning, what A to Z, it's up to you, made to order for you. My question is, how can we get into the government, state, county, and federal businesses here, so that we can ensure that the companies or that the offices are being taken care of with sustainability products, commercial cleaning products? I mean, I understand environmental, and we're all trying to live a much more healthy environment, and chemicals are very dangerous, as you all well know. So my question is are the city buildings and these buildings, are they being cleaned with sustainable products? And if not, is there any way that I can submit contracts or bids to the city?
I'm going to ask I think that's a health question first, because
It is, and I would like to have Rob Field, who also has our environmental services for the county, I know can talk about that.
Yep.
and I'm going to give you points for nice delegation off the panel.
And this kind of is like the Godfather 3. Every time you try to get out, they drag you back in. Actually, to answer your question, at least in the county of Riverside, every product we use for cleaning, it ties into our sustainable building policy is a sustainable or safe product. We have a very special cleaning program that is set up. It's called team cleaning. Every product is pre-measured, so not only is it a safe product, it's even pre-measured, so it's not one of those things where somebody dumps a bunch of bleach in a bucket. So we're very, very careful, and we've been doing that for about 10 years. So yeah, to answer your question directly, but we do that kind of across the board. We did energy efficient retrofits many years ago. Going to start doing it again. LED lighting is on its way. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we do in Riverside County. As I said earlier, our problem is that you're asking the question. I mean, you should already know the answer, and we talk about it quite a bit. We need to do a better job getting the word out. So thanks.
Other questions? Right here in the front.
Justin Scottco. I'm with the Riverside Board of Public Utilities. Actually, I've been posting a couple of things on Facebook with the hashtags, and one of my friends kind of threw out a question that I'd be kind of curious to know in response to the CAP survey, and basically suggesting another question of, really we should be asking people, what would you be willing to give up in order to reduce greenhouse gases? Freeway lanes, meat, electronics from China, primetime TV, obviously not Star Trek.
Yes, thank you. And you got extra points for saving
Thank you. But really the question is, you know, obviously we don't have unlimited resources. We can't fund our way out of this, and sustainability and economic growth may require or economic development that doesn't rely on continual growth. Is there a regional role to play in communicating with the community about what they might have to do without, as well as what they could get in addition through these funding programs?
So, Rick, I'm going to start with you because that's kind of a general purpose regional question, and that fits you the best. So,
You know, it's a really good question, and I would think that if you talk to some people, they might say they're already giving things up. You know, they're conserving water use. You know, maybe it's not something they want to do. Maybe they're sort of against that green lawn, you know, losing that green lawn, and they're doing it. They're not using as much lighting as they have in the past. They're, you know, driving less, and they find that to be a little bit more inconvenient, you know, in order to, you know, save money on gasoline. So I think there's probably some of that stuff that's already occurring. But I think it's an interesting question, and not to dodge the question. But I think, you know, what we're looking for right now is to promote a culture of creating a culture of people wanting to do, you know, things to create sustainability or to maintain sustainability, which is a positive rather than the negative, which is what do you have to give up. I don't think we're at that point yet, but I think some of the giving up is just kind of occurring as we evolve through these issues.
anybody else have a comment? Yeah, Ann.
I think the challenging part of that is usually people don't talk about what they're willing to give up, or they don't flag, I'm willing to give that up, or I'm not willing to give that up, until it's too late to do anything about it. So when you look at public opinion surveys and you ask what the most critical issue is, well, in the early 2000s, traffic congestion was #1 on the list, and below that, you know, traffic congestion topped the list, and then, you know, it was crime and air quality concerns. So people weren't willing to give up their freedom, their mobility freedom at that point in time. But if you look at the surveys from 2008, 2009, 2010, even now, the top of the list of what they're not willing to give up is their job. So it's really hard to pinpoint what people's opinion are until there's a crisis that forces them into making a decision one way or the other. That was a great question, and usually we ask it in the reverse way, is what is so important to you that you're willing to keep paying for it? It's another way to ask the question.
So I'll take one more question. Somebody's got one. Right, we have it right there.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what the original speaker said. Mr. McMahon said, if you travel, you learn a lot. And when I was in the Army, and I lived in Europe, and I drove for one of the local commanders of the 3rd Armored Division. I had a chance to drive around, and I noticed that in Europe they built pathways for the local, animals and preservation of the local habitat, and that preserved lives by reducing the number of accidents and the lives of the animals. So is there anything in California where, and I've seen this in other states, I just don't know which ones, but in projects that would create paths across highways for the natural habitat?
What I mentioned before, the Western Riverside County Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan that identified key areas within the western part of the county to preserve for habitat. Another important part of that was the linkages and preserving the linkages to make sure that there was a pathway for wildlife to go from one protected area through and across, where it's generally the freeway corridors, to be able to get to the next section. So one of the priorities that we had been working on with Riverside Conservation Agency was that for the money we provided, we're keenly interested in preserving those linkages so that there was a way to ensure that wildlife could move from one to the other. And I would say that Western Riverside County's Habitat Conservation Plan is one of the most progressive in the country. It's a great model. Long way to go, still a great model.
Yeah, and in addition to that, there are some project-specific examples. I know there's I think some of the toll roads in Orange County have wildlife passage areas that go underneath the freeways, and they actually have signage that says wildlife corridor, which is interesting because I didn't really know the wildlife could read. But they see that
Oh,
and
no,
then
well,
kind of get
well
directed
played,
there.
well played.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very
yeah,
good.
very
You
well.
learn something every day on
Yeah.
these plans.
There you go. So the last round, I'm going to give each panelist a chance for a closing comment, the last chance to impress your judge. I mean, make your point for the audience. And I'm going to start down with Rick.
Well, thank you all for sticking it out and for being here. I think we're super, I mean, just speaking on behalf of WRCOG, we're so impressed that we had this many people come to this conference. And we're hoping, quite frankly, that it's not just people that are here that believe in the stuff that we're talking about, but that there are folks that question it and are not necessarily for it, because those are the folks that we really want to have the dialogue with as we kind of move the needle and move this issue forward.
Please join us in partnership. We do have a poster board in the back that's highlighting our cities in the county that have developed Healthy Cities resolutions, and we'd love to work with you to improve the health of all of our residents.
So each of you gathered here today are truly change agents. You're looking at ways that moving forward, we in the Inland Empire can actually create a more sustainable reality for ourselves as well as for future generations. And so I applaud you for that.
That was nice. I like that.
It was very nice. And building upon that very nice statement, yes. No, I think it is important that we're talking about the Inland Empire, and there is a lot of work that we do together because that county line is invisible. It's invisible from almost any way you try and look at it. But I think it's crucial, and this is a great effort. We need to make sure that we talk about what the Inland Empire's future needs to be and how we are going to solve the problem, because the last thing that should happen is have people from outside of the Inland Empire tell us what our quality of life is going to be and what our future is going to be. And I think we need to control our own destiny and set the vision for the future. So I think this conference is a great idea, and thank you, Rick, for putting it on.
So before I turn this back over to Ron, and before I ask you to thank you, I know that you all want to know the results. And exactly, you're on that's why you're still here, right? The scores were very close. It was 62 to 59 to 60 to 61. And Ann was the one with 62, but that's before I factor in the conference hosting points, which gives Rick another 3 and allows him to prevail at 64 points.
This is the end of the conference, and as the panelists said, thank you very much for coming. I would particularly want to call out thanks to Jennifer Ward. You've seen walking around; it was instrumental, and also Shana Conway from the CSSD, who's did much of the logistics of today. But thank you. I did, as I indicated, I think earlier, there will be PowerPoints be available on CSSD website, as will be the videos of each of the sessions. So if you want to see what the count was and whether or not it was accurate tonight, this afternoon, you can check it out as a repeat show. We're going to have reception after this. There's some food in the back. There will be opportunities to have a drink. But the reason for reception is not for good food, but really for good conversation. We have speakers who are here. We have panelists who are here. You have interesting people sitting at your table, people from different kind of points of view. Take this opportunity to have the good conversation. Finally, it seems to me that the success of this conference is what will happen in terms of steps taken by cities and by the region. it is time to make sustainable things happen. It is time to compete for AB 32 funds. It is time to measure results, and I think why not a star rating for cities and for this region. It is time to, if you have not done so, to read Greening Cities, and I think most importantly, to follow and use Parsons' some 10 steps. I think it is time to make our cities sustainable places. Sustainability will define the future of inland Southern California as a good place to live and work, to raise our families and to visit. And I would like to close today just by reading the most of a final paragraph in the book, which there are copies around, and which Julia Parzan was one of the three authors. This is, again, the Guide to Greening Cities. This comes from the last paragraph. The Green City movement and the race to resilience aren't about planting a bunch of trees, restoring a few wetlands, weather stripping some homes, and checking the box of gone green. They are about creating the next generation cities, vibrant and beautiful urban communities in which people enjoy clean air and water, healthy food, access to affordable shelter and meaningful work, and a sense of belonging and worth. Our hope, our goal is putting forward this snapshot of the Green City movement in North America is to inspire more cities to take up this critical task and to help them on their journey.